Battleground New York City, the fight for your vote. Your front row seat to the battle for New York's next mayor. It's the old guard clinging to power, chasing a candidate they never saw coming. Every night, our experts break it down.
What New Yorkers want above all else is authenticity.
We're listening to the people who matter most, you, the voters. And when the candidates sit across from us, nothing's off the table. What's your plan to make New York City feel like a safer city?
S.E. Cup, that's your perception. Of course, there's a lot of crime.
So what's happening right now? Let's dive in. Welcome to Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. I'm S.E. Cup. It was a big night for the candidates running for mayor of New York City. Frontrunner Zohran Mamdani, the 33-year-old Democratic Socialist, Andrew Cuomo, the former governor of New York, and Curtis Sliwa, head of the Guardian Angels, running as a Republican, all faced off tonight in the first general election debate. It was 2 hours. It was action-packed. There were some heated moments and some good information out there for New York voters who are paying very close attention to this all-important race. But the first hour was not actually focused on the top issues of this race, affordability and housing. That came later, but instead on national issues and, in fact, international issues. The candidates were asked about Israel and Hamas, President Trump and crime in major cities. And only afterwards did they shift to public safety, transportation, housing, education, and other issues that matter most to New Yorkers. All again, proof of what we've been telling you here at Battleground NYC. This race is national. It's not just about electing a local mayor. If you missed it, we have lots for you to watch and listen to from the debate. And if you watched it like I did, you'll enjoy our analysis. I'm joined by two terrific commentators, New Yorkers themselves, who you know from Battleground NYC. Welcome to J.C. Polanco, attorney and assistant professor at the University of Mount St. Vincent, and Kaivan Shroff, Democratic commentator and attorney. Gentlemen, this is the night we've been waiting for. I'm so glad the both of you are here with me to talk about it.
Thank you for having me.
Great to join.
Yeah, okay, so JC, I want to start with you. I want to get both of your top lines. JC, was there a winner of this debate? And if so, who was it?
New York City voters. We're the winners. We had an opportunity to see the three top candidates for mayor of New York City, who's going to lead us into the future, who's going to be our main cheerleader, who's going to be our spokesperson internationally. We had an opportunity to see them in action tonight, see the contrast between the candidates. The questions were tough. As you mentioned in the top of the program, they had an opportunity to show how they would react in the international stage. How would they interact with the president of the United States? What are some things that are top of mind for a mayor who's has to deal with the most important city on earth? And then later on, we went into the micro issues.
Yes.
We talked about 311. We'll talk about that later. But look, New York City voters won tonight because we got to see the three candidates answer some of the toughest questions that you could ask them and things that you've been talking about here every night, S.E.
Okay, I take your point, JC, but I'm going to sound a lot like a debate moderator right now and say, let me repeat the question. JC, was there a winner from tonight's debate, and who was it?
Oh, no. I'm going to repeat. The New York City voters who got the opportunity to watch were all engaged. Now, if you're asking me about the candidates that were on the stage, who are you going to lift their arm up and say, this is the winner of the night?
Yeah.
That's a little more complicated because you're looking at style, you're looking at substance. I think former Governor Andrew Cuomo knocked it out the park with experience. That's his strength. He went in there and talked about it tonight. You know, there were some weaknesses there with his answers as to what he could have done better. Focusing on his social media was not exactly the answer. I'm sure a lot of people wanted to hear. They wanted to hear, hey, I should have been more active. But he did say to his defense, hey, I should have been more available. I should have been more available to the press instead of running the Rose Garden strategy. As far as Assemblyman Mamdani, we know what his weakness is. His weakness is his lack of experience. He went in there with the zinger. I'm sure he practiced it a lot, but it was effective. And then he stuck on message. He has the discipline of a Marine when it comes to talking about affordability. By the end of the debate, you think he invented the word affordability, right? So, and then Curtis Sliwa, quintessential New Yorker, the guy we know, the guy you can close your eyes, you can see him on the train.
Yeah.
You know that he means what he says. He was authentic tonight. He came through. What I was surprised about was how he attacked former Governor Cuomo so much throughout the night. I thought he was going to withhold some of that, considering that they are both the opposition to the Democratic Socialist candidate. Very surprised about that.
Okay, good points. And you're right. We're gonna dig deeper into all of this. But Kaivan, just for you, who was the winner of tonight's debate?
Yeah, I think Mamdani was the winner of the debate. I think the different candidates had distinct goals. Mamdani had a low bar. He just had to not mess up, and he didn't mess up. And I think, he actually started off looking pretty tired. He was a bit frustrated and angry, not sort of the joyful warrior we've seen in those Fox News interviews earlier this week and those sort of moments. At the same time, I think Cuomo had a good night, but unfortunately, it wasn't enough. Specifically, he had two competing goals in this debate. One, he had to come across like not a jerk, because a lot of people have been describing him that way. And then that, I think, limited him from going for the jugular, which he also needed to do. He needed to knock Mamdani off his game. He needed to pound him on policy. And we didn't have those exchanges. And in a lot of ways, it's reflective of the frustration people have with moderate Democrats that they don't take risks.
Yeah, good point. You both mentioned this a little bit. I want to play some sound from the top of the debate where the candidates were asked about their preparedness, their qualifications, their experience. Let's take a listen to what they said.
In other words, what the Assemblyman said is he has no experience. And this is not a job for someone who has no management experience to run 300,000 people, no financial experience to run $115 billion budget. He literally has never had a job. On his resume, it says he interned for his mother. This is not a job for a first-timer. Any day, you could have a hurricane, you have, God forbid, a 9/11, a health pandemic. If you don't know what you're doing, people could die.
Mr. Mamdani, want to respond?
And if we have a health pandemic, then why would New Yorkers turn back to the governor who sent seniors to their death in nursing homes? That's the kind of experience that's on offer here today. What I don't have in experience, I make up for in integrity. And what you don't have in integrity, you could never make up for in experience.
Yeah.
Kaivan, who won that bout? Because listen, when Andrew Cuomo started talking about Mamdani's inexperience, I was like, oh, that's good. And then Zoran comes back with like a 1-2 punch. Who do you think won that one?
Yeah, I think it depends how much attention you've been paying, because to me, at least, that Cuomo line about you interned for your mother was a new one, and it's definitely a zinger. And I think the people at home watching these local debates, maybe it's a little younger now that Mamdani's in, but they tend to be older folks who that might resonate with. And I think Mamdani, that's a good line. It goes viral. People posted it. The reality is, though, if you've been following closely, it's a reused line. By the way, just like a lot of his riffs are very rehearsed. And I think that's why he does so well in those Fox News one-to-ones where the minute he hears Trump, he's ready to go, look at camera, give his line. He kind of does that a bunch, but I think if you hadn't been following, it sounds good for the first time.
Okay, both of you stay right there. I've got more sound to play. I want more reactions. Don't go anywhere. More Battleground NYC after the break. We're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. With me is J.C. Polanco, attorney and assistant professor at the University of Mount St. Vincent, and Kaivan Shroff, Democratic commentator and attorney. J.C., Curtis Lewa tried to reverse Uno card the experience question, okay? And he tried tying Cuomo and Mamdani together. Take a listen.
Thank God I'm not a professional politician. We have the architect and we have the apprentice of no cash bail, which has been a disaster. We have the architect and the apprentice here of Raise the Age. My own son was almost killed because of that in a gang attack. We have the architect and we have the apprentice of Close Rikers Island, which would just release criminals in the street. Thank God I'm not a professional politician, because they have helped create this crime crisis in the city that we face. And
JC, what'd you think? Curtis there is basically saying you've got the elder statesman and the apprentice coming in, and they're basically the same.
Yeah, that was well rehearsed. He has some great Republican consultants supporting him. And you can tell that he used it effectively. He looked at the camera. This was his opportunity to say, these guys are peas in a pod. And I think it was pretty effective. And that was his moment without any interruption to get that out of the way. He used it a couple of times throughout the night. He wanted to draw a distinction between both of these guys. He saw what his weakness was, being the non-elected official. And I think he did a good job in that line.
Good. Okay. And I want to get to another issue that was really important in the beginning of this debate. It was the issue of Israel. And here was one of Mamdani's moments on it. It was an important moment. Let's take a look.
How would you assure New Yorkers, especially Jewish residents who might be concerned about this, that you would be a mayor for all? You have 1 minute to answer this.
Thank you for this opportunity. When I am speaking about the responsibility of leading this city, I mean leading not just those who voted for me, leading not just those who vote, but leading every single person who calls this city home. And that includes Jewish New Yorkers. And I have been so thankful for the opportunity I've had to sit with so many Jewish New Yorkers over the course of the primary and through the general. And it's in those conversations that I learned that this phrase evokes many painful memories. Memories of bus attacks in Haifa, of restaurant attacks in Jerusalem. And I heard from a rabbi about their roommate who was killed on one of those buses. And in hearing that and the distance between that impact and the rationale that some use of saying it, of speaking about the Israeli occupation of Palestinian land, is why I said that I would discourage this language that I do not use. And what I'm looking to do as the first Muslim mayor of this city is to ensure that we bring every New Yorker together. Jewish New Yorkers, Muslim New Yorkers, every single person that calls this city home, that they understand they won't just be protected, but they will belong.
Kaivan, what did you make of the fact that he was basically saying he had to learn that Jews had been attacked and Jews had been targeted, and so now he gets the issue more fully?
It was an interesting exchange, especially on the heels of that viral Fox News moment where he didn't say that, Hamas should disarm, and he tried to sort of do cleanup. This again was a moment that is verbatim rehearsed. He said that line, those phrases, those words in that order again and again in interviews and on the campaign trail. And I think it comes across as disingenuous to some extent. By the way, he said the same thing about he just learned in the last 5 years that safety is a part of leadership and justice. So those moments don't land well for him. And again, those were moments that Cuomo sort of pulled punches. He didn't really jump on those and say, you didn't know until after 2020 that policing is part of leadership and public safety in the biggest city in the world. So those were definitely missed opportunities, I think.
To that issue, I want to play a clip. Here's Mamdani on policing. Do we have that? Maybe we'll do that after the break. But JC, what did you think of his Israel moment? This is something he's been really, really sort of watched on.
Look, I'm an independent. Chances are I won't be voting for Assemblyman Mamdani. I can tell you I won't be voting for Assemblyman Mamdani. This is truly disingenuous. The man has built his political campaign on taking positions that are anti-Israel and borderline anti-Semitic. Look, you take a look at his questions yesterday on whether or not you encourage Hamas to be disarmed. He can't answer that. We have seen the language that have been used by his supporters regarding Israel. We have seen the talk about genocide. We have seen the lack of empathy for October 7th. We've seen that over and over again. For now, all of a sudden, for him to realize that calling for the death of Jews is all of a sudden something that he hadn't thought about how hurtful it could be, it's just tiring, and it's just not true. Similarly, I think it's very difficult to debate Assemblyman Mamdani. It is. Why? Because for every single issue, I've been studying this issue for a while, whether it's on prostitution and sex work, whether it's on taxation, whatever issue you can think of, the decriminalization of misdemeanors, ending jails of all kinds, and decriminalizing things of all kinds, he'll say he never said it, it didn't happen, and he doesn't think that anymore. So it's very, very tough to debate someone who's just weaving and saying he never said things that are clearly here on video, from seizing the means to productions to decommodifying housing. Very tough.
Kaivan, go ahead.
No, and I agree. I do think that the moderators were aggressive at certain points, but not on those things where you had a tweet that was clearly untrue. What he said, he has said defund the police, things like that. And it seems like in his head, if he didn't say it since announcing his candidacy for mayor, it doesn't count. But of course, he doesn't have a long record. He doesn't have the experience. So I think it's completely fair for folks to want to judge him on what he said in the last 5 years.
Yeah. Okay. Good points, guys. And again, stay put. I've got more for you on the other side of this break. More Battleground NYC after this. We're back with more Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. And gentlemen, I wanted to get your take on policing because it's a big, big issue in this race. The issue of police crime, public safety, on transportation, in the subways, on the streets. And Mamdani's gotten pushback from law enforcement and moderate voters on things that he's said about the cops, as you guys were just referencing. Here was his message tonight. Take a look.
Growing up in this city, I would think often about safety and justice and the ways in which that relationship has been irrevocably harmed. When I learned about the exonerated five, when I learned about Sean Bell, when I learned about Eric Garner, when I learned about Michael Brown, and then in 2020, when I wrote these tweets, learning about the death of George Floyd. And that was a moment where it felt as if the distance between these two ideals had never been further. And in becoming an assembly member and serving and representing more than 100,000 people in Queens, learning that to deliver justice means to also deliver safety. And that means leading a city where you recognize the bravery of the men and women who joined the NYPD and put their lives on the line. Yeah. It means representing the Muslims who were illegally surveilled in my district and the black and brown New Yorkers who've been victims of police brutality. Growing up in this...
JC, how did he do?
Again, the same cadence. This is rehearsed. I've seen it before. You cannot escape calling the police racist, anti-queer, saying that our district attorneys are the ones that are committing violent crimes, wanting to end any incarceration because it doesn't work. I mean, this is the history of Assemblyman Mamdani. Now he's cornered because he's 3 weeks away from an election, and he has to represent the largest city in the country. And if you're going to be the CEO of New York City government, how can you defend these incredibly irresponsible positions? They're indefensible. So you have to say things like, when I learned, and now I apologize.
A lot of learning. Yeah,
it's a lot of learning that's happened. And the kind of learning, this is where I think Governor Cuomo really knocked it out the park tonight with the experience question. Because this learning that you're going to do on the job, he's already done. So it really was an eye-opener for voters tonight, especially independent voters. And some of those 72% of Democrats that didn't vote in the closed party primary, they may be coming out in the next couple of weeks.
Kaivan, what did you think of that?
Yeah, I think it actually played a little bit better without, with the context of that he was responding to Cuomo, because I think Cuomo was too in on police. Like, obviously that's his message and that's his sort of what he's running these ads on that I'm sure we'll all be seeing a lot more of over the next several weeks. But he didn't acknowledge that what I think a lot of Democratic voters do feel, which is that there are obviously some problems with policing in America. That's been well established. And so Mamdani reminded folks of that. I will say this was another moment that I think, Cuomo, I talked about that bind he faced of not coming across too aggressive, but trying to have a moment. He also could have played for some Sliwa voters on the issue of crime. And especially, Sliwa's charmed people online with 15-second clips and like, oh, maybe he's not a mean Republican. But the reality is 2 hours of Curtis Sliwa was a lot of Curtis Sliwa. He sounded like a wacko. I was thinking of that Lisa Rinna gift. It's wackadoodle time. The 100th time he mentioned the Guardian Angels, which is, by the way, a vigilante group where he's lied about crimes that they've stopped. And it is a bit crazy. And Cuomo could have taken that opportunity. By the way, he lost the plot a couple times. He seemed confused. Cuomo could have jumped on that and said, look, guys, if you want to stop Mamdani, if you want policing to be taken seriously, I'm your guy.
Well, I appreciate the Bravo reference. I don't know if anyone else did, but I did. Okay. You guys, one more time, stay right there. I've got more questions for you after the break. Again, just one more time, more Battleground NYC right after this. Battleground NYC is back one last time with JC Polanco and Kaivan Shroff. You guys, I want to ask about Mamdani's proposal to end the Gifted and Talented program, which came up. It's an issue we've talked a lot about here on this show. I thought he kind of walked it back. He said he only meant it for kindergartners. Kaivan, we've had a lot of New York parents who are worried about losing that program. Did he do a good enough job there?
I don't know. I think the people that care about it will know more about it and have looked into the coverage of what he was proposing. And I think most people's conclusion is it's not going to stop at kindergarten if you go about it the way that he was discussing it. So I don't know that he walked it back effectively enough for voters that care a lot about those issues, which would be the parents who, are prioritizing that, of course.
He's walked back.
I want to do
things, SE.
Go ahead.
He's walked back so many things tonight. Honestly, I'm thinking he's like Michael Jackson moon dancing the whole night, because he walks back on the Gifted and Talented. He walks back on prostitution. He walks back. It's very difficult to debate someone like this because you can't corner them. You come in there with a strategy and they go, no, you don't. You see me. No, you don't.
I didn't say that. Right.
Where I said that. You didn't see me say that. And we did. He wants to end these programs. It was a major story in the New York Times. We all saw it. Now tonight, we say it. It's very hard.
I want to finish up with a potpourri lightning round. I love a lightning round.
So did
So
they.
first, the candidates were asked. This one was crazy, guys. The candidates were asked which modern day president was your favorite. They all they got there eventually. Curtis Sliwa eventually said Ronald Reagan. Mamdani said FDR. I wouldn't call him modern, but okay. Cuomo said Bill Clinton. Now, you guys,
No.
gentlemen,
No.
gentlemen, to a woman's ear, I can tell you how I heard this answer. Cuomo, who's been accused by 13 women of sexual harassment, to go Bill Clinton. JC, was that the gaffe I thought it was?
No, listen. First of all, he was Secretary of HUD under Bill Clinton. It was a loyalty thing. But there was also the question of modern. When you're thinking modern, you're not thinking FDR. That was a mistake. You don't say FDR. That's back in the 40s and 30s. What are we talking about?
I agree, but a
that was a
man
mistake.
accused of sexually harassing 13 women to name another man accused of sexual harassment and assault, to me, just as a woman listening, sounded nuts.
I think he should have said Barack Obama and kept it moving. I understand the loyalty, but I'm sure if he could go back in time, he would say Barack Obama.
Although I don't know.
I don't know that he would. I don't know that he would.
I hear you on that, but I feel like actually I've been seeing old Bill Clinton ads going viral, talking about how both parties are failing. So there is it's easier to pick somebody that's not in recent memory. And I think especially on the left, there's been a lot of Obama and Biden bashing. At the same time, I thought it was a stunning moment because when the far left has been haranguing national Democrats across the country to rally behind Zoran Mamdani, and the fact that he can't name a Democratic president from the last 80 years that he likes, and he can't commit to endorsing the current governor, who, by the way, has been swinging back at MAGA. She's been doing a lot of progressive things. Can't support her when she endorsed him in the New York Times, when they appeared together earlier this week. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. And I think it really underscores that the coalition between moderates and the left of the party always feels like a double standard and very unequal. So
that was also a wild moment. All the candidates were asked to raise your hand if they were going to endorse Kathy Hochul's reelection for governor. No one did. What did you make of that, JC?
Look, it makes sense for former Governor Cuomo not to endorse Governor Hochul, I'll tell you that. But my goodness, Governor Hochul went out on a limb for Assemblyman Mamdani. This is a lady that has to win red counties across the country. And she said, okay, to the socialist who has some of the most obscene videos on taking back the means of production and seizing them. And she knows that she put herself in a tough position against Congresswoman Stefanik. I was surprised that he's not going to endorse her. I guess the far left are going to hold Governor Hochul to a position where they're going to make some demands.
It was interesting. Okay, what do you want to hear less of or more of in the second debate next week? Kaivan, I'll start with you.
I want to hear specific breakdowns with follow-up questions about the policy plans and how they're going to get enacted into law.
Okay, and JC, what do you want to hear more or less of next week?
Look, I want to hear more about experience. I'm big into this. This is a big job, and I think that Governor Cuomo has this ability, because he's done so much, to almost diminish the job that he's actually had as governor of New York. And to talk about his years as Attorney General, that is important here because New Yorkers that are going to vote want to know that the CEO of New York City government is ready on day one. I want to hear more of that.
Do you guys want to hear more or less about Trump?
I want to hear, but I thought one of the weakest lines from Mamdani was that Trump would have to get through him. I was like, I don't feel comfortable. Can anyone else stand in the way? He'd get bowled over. He didn't even say it with gravitas. So I don't want to hear more about Trump, but I do want to understand from both candidates. I actually think Cuomo didn't do a great job answering in detail either. What would you do to protect this city from Donald Trump?
Look,
JC.
I think that we want to hear less of Donald Trump, more about New York City and how you're going to keep us safe. One of the reasons is that Donald Trump is talking about sending the National Guard is because he believes that we have a very weak law and order system in New York City, very weak district attorneys. So I would focus in on how are we going to enforce the laws on the books.
Okay, and very quick prediction from both of you before we go. Will we see a change in the polls after this debate? JC?
I think we're going to see a change. I would think that Governor Cuomo goes up by about 4 to 5 points.
Okay, and Kaivan, what do you think?
No, I don't think we're going to see much of a change.
That's what I'm going to be looking for. I hope we get a poll between this debate and next week's debate to really measure, who moved the needle a little bit. But as a reminder, we do have another debate that's next Wednesday. We'll be covering that as well. And I just want to thank you both for watching this long debate. I was really excited to do it. I know as two political pros, you guys were too. And then staying up with me for all of your great analysis. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Great to be back.
Can I ask you to join me next week? Live on
Anytime,
the
yeah.
air.
Yes.
Anytime.
Okay, good. Well, we'll see how the next debate differs at all. If we get different questions, maybe a little bit different kind of pushback from the moderators. We'll see if the candidates change their the strategies at all too. Still a lot to watch for. This was a huge night. I'm sure there's going to be another one in our future before this race is over. Thanks as always for joining us here at Battleground NYC.